A white two-story wooden house stood in a quiet residential area on the outskirts of Boston. A well-tended flower bed adorned the entrance, where the last flowers of the season bloomed resolutely before winter. Judy Williams, who lived in this house, stood at the kitchen island, writing plans for her anniversary dinner in her notebook. 15 years, she murmured. Her voice held a touch of sentiment and a hint of weariness. Judy was an agent who was becoming successful at a local real estate company. With her glossy chestnut hair that reached her shoulders and her habit of always wearing proper suits at work, she was highly trusted by her colleagues. The photo hanging on the kitchen wall captured Judy and her husband Thomas looking happy. Thomas, with his grayish-blue eyes, worked as a middle manager at an investment bank in Boston. His handsome features, intellectual air, an occasional boyish smile were what had attracted Judy to him. From the outside, they appeared to have a perfect marriage. Good jobs, a lovely home, and mutual understanding, at least, that's how it seemed. But recently, there had been changes in Thomas. Previously returning home by 6 in the evening, he had for the past few months been arriving at 9, sometimes even after 10. Judy outwardly showed understanding when he explained, "Work is busy." However, she felt uneasy about how he'd become inseparable from his smartphone, even taking it with him to the bathroom. Weekends too saw an increase in him going out for work engagements, noticeably reducing the time they spent together. Conversations dwindled, and a subtle tension.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
And had begun to pervade their bedroom. Still, when Thomas suggested dinner at the upscale restaurant, Le Chateau, for their 15th wedding anniversary, Judy's heart leaped. Le Chateau was the most difficult-to-book high-end French restaurant in Boston and the place where they had decided to get married. Thomas had remembered that special place. We still have a chance, she thought, as hope returned to her eyes. What do you think? Does this dress still suit me? Judy asked her best friend Martha on the phone. On the smartphone screen was an image of Judy wearing a black cocktail dress she had purchased 10 years ago. You look fabulous. Thomas will surely faint. Martha's voice was cheerful, but quickly shifted to a serious tone. But, Judy, are you really okay? Thomas lately seems. Don't worry, Judy interrupted her friend. Marriages go through different phases. This is just one of them. Our relationship will surely improve with the anniversary. After hanging up, Judy gazed at the dress she had taken from the closet. She had done everything to protect her marriage with Thomas. She had perfectly managed both housework and her job, trying to accommodate his hobbies and interests. Yet, she felt his heart gradually drifting away. On the day of their anniversary, unusually, Thomas came home early. After showering and changing, he waited for Judy in the living room. When she appeared in her black dress, Thomas's eyes lit up slightly. You look beautiful, he said, presenting a small jewelry box. When Judy opened the box, inside was a diamond necklace with a delicate design. Thomas, this is lovely. She hugged her husband with emotion. Thomas smiled and embraced her back. In that moment, they felt as if they had regained an intimacy they had long forgotten. Would you put it on for me? When Judy turned her back, Thomas gently lifted her hair and placed the necklace around her neck. Perfect, he said with a smile, but his eyes seemed to be hiding something. Judy brushed aside that sense of unease and put her arm around Thomas's. Let's go. It seems like it's going to be a wonderful evening. As they left the house, Judy believed that tonight would certainly be a special night. She sincerely hoped that this anniversary evening would be a turning point in mending their relationship. Le Chateau, standing in downtown Boston, was a high-end restaurant converted from a 19th-century mansion. Soft light streaming through stained glass windows gently illuminated antique furniture and paintings. When Judy and Thomas arrived, a uniformed male staff member opened the door and greeted them courteously. Mr. and Mrs. Williams, we've been expecting you. After checking in at the entrance, senior waiter Arthur guided the two. Arthur, who appeared to be in his 60s, had his silver hair slicked back and stood with perfect posture. His demeanor exuded years of experience. "I understand today is your wedding anniversary. We've prepared a special table for you." Arthur led them to a small alcove at the back of the main dining room. A semicircular window offered a panoramic view of Boston's night skyline, and the table was adorned with white roses. Judy was moved and caught her breath. "Thank you for the lovely table," she said with a smile to Arthur. Thomas merely nodded and immediately took out his smartphone to check the screen. At that gesture, Judy let out a small sigh but didn't want to ruin the special evening. When Arthur presented the wine list, Thomas briefly looked it over and said, "A bottle of champagne." After Arthur departed, Thomas said, "I'm going to the bathroom for a moment," and left his seat. Left alone, Judy gazed at Boston's night view through the window. The city lights twinkled like stars, reminding her of the night 15 years ago when she had accepted Thomas's proposal. Back then, everything had seemed to sparkle. She looked at her ring and smiled. About 10 minutes later, Thomas returned. He seemed somewhat restless and took out his smartphone again. "Work contact?" Judy asked, and Thomas hurriedly put his phone away. "Yes, there's a bit of a problem going on. But I'll try not to think about it tonight." The champagne was brought over, and they toasted. The sound of their glasses touching resonated in the quiet space. Judy gathered her courage and began, "Thomas, lately I've been feeling a distance between you and me." Thomas momentarily showed a surprised expression but quickly regained his composure. "What do you mean? You come home late, you're hardly ever home on weekends. And you've become inseparable from your smartphone," Judy said quietly. "Is there a problem?" Thomas let out a deep sigh. "It's just that work is busy. A new project has started, and everyone's working desperately. There's nothing for you to worry about." He smiled gently, but his eyes weren't smiling. Judy didn't pursue it further. She didn't want to argue tonight. "I understand. But I want us to have a relationship where we can talk more." Arthur brought the menus. Today's chef's recommendations begin with a duo of lobster and foie gras, and the main course is Wagyu filet with truffle sauce. Thomas closed the menu and ordered the chef's tasting course for two. Judy was surprised. The chef's course was the most expensive menu at Le Chateau. "It's a special night," Thomas said. "And let's have a special wine too." He pointed to a 2015 Romanée-Conti on the wine list. Judy's eyes widened. It was a wine that cost several $1,000s a bottle. "Thomas, such an expensive wine." "It's fine," Thomas interrupted. "We can indulge ourselves tonight, can't we?" Arthur noted the order and gracefully departed. Thomas looked at his smartphone again and said, "I'm going to the bathroom again." This was the second time. Judy found it a bit suspicious, but she was more concerned about his extravagance. While they were affluent, this was the kind of expense that the normal Thomas would call wasteful. While Thomas was away from the table, Judy took a sip of champagne and pondered. Could it be that Thomas was feeling guilty about something? Or did he just want to make their anniversary special? As she was deep in thought, Thomas's smartphone vibrated. The screen of the phone on the table lit up momentarily, displaying part of a message: "Tonight is the last night. Tomorrow begins our new life," from a sender named Rachel. Judy felt as if her heart had stopped for a moment. She looked away from the phone and tried to calm herself. Various possibilities raced through her mind. Was Thomas having an affair? Or did this mean something else? Before Thomas returned, Judy took a deep breath and composed her expression. Anxiety and suspicion were swirling within her, but she wanted to further assess the situation. When Thomas finally returned after more than 10 minutes, his complexion looked a bit off. "Are you okay?" Judy asked, and Thomas replied, "Just a bit tired." The appetizers were served. Faced with the artfully plated dishes, Judy momentarily forgot her anxiety. "It's beautiful," she said. Thomas nodded, but he seemed distracted. He took out his smartphone again and checked something. While starting on her appetizer, Judy tried to engage Thomas in conversation. Memories from their student days, failed first date stories, episodes from their honeymoon. All were precious memories for the two, but Thomas's responses were thin, occasionally answering absent-mindedly with just a "yeah." Before the main course was brought, Thomas took a third bathroom break. Judy could no longer contain the mixed feelings of anxiety and anger. She felt the urge to check if he was actually going to the bathroom or if he was communicating with someone. However, she reconsidered, thinking such an act would lower her dignity. When Arthur brought the main course, Thomas also returned. On Thomas's plate was a perfectly grilled Wagyu fillet, plated with truffle sauce. He stared at it, and for a moment, his expression hardened. "What's wrong?" When Judy asked, Thomas forced a smile and said, "My stomach doesn't feel well. I don't think I can eat today." "But you ordered such an expensive course," Judy was perplexed. "As long as you enjoy it, that's fine," Thomas said. "I'm happy if you're happy." There was truth to those words, but Judy sensed something unnatural. She looked at her own dish, a roast duck with orange sauce. It certainly looked delicious, but she too was losing her appetite. The expensive wine was brought. Thomas thanked the sommelier and filled her glass. "To your health," Thomas raised his glass. "And to our future." As Judy raised her glass, she had a strange impression. She felt something hidden in Thomas's words, his eyes, and all his actions. She maintained her smile but only sipped a tiny amount of the wine. Thomas looked at his smartphone and was about to stand up again. Judy instinctively grabbed his arm. "Going again?" Her voice mixed with undisguised irritation. "Sorry, an important message," Thomas began to say, but then changed his expression as if sensing something from Judy. "No. It's okay. I'll stay with you tonight." He sat back down. However, before the main course, an unspoken tension now hung between them. Just as Judy was about to touch her food, Thomas said, "Wait a moment." There was urgency in his voice. Judy stopped in surprise and looked at her husband. "Let's toast first." Thomas took the Romani Conti bottle and poured the deep red liquid into her glass. After pouring into his own glass, he raised it with slightly trembling hands. "To our 15 years of marriage." Judy looked into her husband's eyes. There was some indescribable emotion residing there. Tension, anxiety, or fear. She couldn't read it. She only knew for certain that these were not the gentle, calm eyes of Thomas that she was used to. To 15 years, Judy also raised her glass in response but only took a tiny sip. Something felt off. This high-end restaurant, expensive wine, and his unnatural behavior, all of it made her wary. Putting her glass down, Judy turned her attention back to the food. The elaborately plated roast duck certainly looked appetizing. However, seeing Thomas not touch his food at all, she again had questions. "Aren't you going to eat?" Thomas smiled again and said, "My stomach's just not feeling well." That smile seemed forced, and small beads of sweat appeared to be forming on his forehead. He again raised the wine to his lips and drank deeply. As Judy raised her fork, a small commotion was heard from the restaurant entrance. While she looked in that direction, Thomas's eyes fell on her plate, and for just a moment, he showed an expression of holding his breath. However, by the time Judy turned back, he was already smiling as if nothing had happened. "It's a lovely dinner," Judy said. "But it's a shame you can't eat." "Yes, it's truly a shame," Thomas said, though he also seemed somewhat relieved. "But if you enjoy it, that's fine." Their conversation was interrupted when waiter Arthur came to pour water. Arthur poured the water with elegance, but there seemed to be a bit of urgency in his movements. Standing beside Judy, as he poured the water, he quietly said, "Madam, please check under your plate." His voice was as soft as a whisper, and Thomas didn't seem to have heard. Arthur placed the carafe down, bowed, and departed. His expression clearly showed anxiety. Judy was perplexed. What did Arthur's words mean? She looked at her husband, but Thomas was checking his smartphone again. The sweat on his forehead had increased. Maybe the wine was a bit too strong. Thomas smiled as if making an excuse. "I'm going to the bathroom." The moment he left his seat, Judy's heart began to race. Arthur's words repeated in her head. "Please check under your plate." Under the plate? Why? After confirming that Thomas's figure had disappeared into the back of the restaurant, she carefully lifted her plate slightly. And she gasped. A small piece of paper was tucked under the plate. Trying not to be noticed by those around, Judy quickly slid the paper under her napkin. Her hands were shaking. She opened the paper in the shadow of the napkin and read the words written there. "There is poison in this dish. Do not eat it under any circumstances. Your husband is trying to kill you." It felt as if the world had stopped for a moment. The words echoed in Judy's mind. Poison. Thomas is trying to kill me. A joke? A prank? Or? Her hands shook more. The message displayed on the smartphone, Thomas's unusual behavior, the high insurance payout, all the pieces began to form a terrifying picture. She remembered that 6 months ago, at Thomas's suggestion, she had significantly increased her life insurance coverage. "It's for just in case," he had said. The restaurant's luxurious interior suddenly felt like a prison confining her. Judy tried to take a deep breath, but her chest felt tight. She couldn't tell if this was reality or a nightmare. The sound of Thomas returning was heard. Judy hurriedly slipped the piece of paper into her handbag and tried to act as if nothing had happened. However, the blood had likely drained from her face, and she couldn't hide it. "What's wrong?" Thomas asked as he sat down. "You look pale." "It's nothing," Judy tried to smile, but she knew herself how unnatural that smile must have looked. "I'm just a bit tired." Thomas seemed relieved. "I see, understandable. You've been busy lately." He took the wine and tried to pour into her glass. "Would you like a bit more?" "No, thank you," Judy quickly replied. "Actually, my stomach is also a bit." "I see," Thomas said. A moment of panic flashed across his expression. "But, it's such a special dish. Won't you try eating a little?" Judy felt terror at those words. Was he really trying to get her to eat a poisoned dish? Why? Why would her husband do such a thing? "Actually, my stomach is starting to feel bad too," Judy said. What a shame for such a special dinner. An urgency appeared in Thomas's expression. "I see, but since we're here, maybe just one bite." "I'm sorry," Judy stood up. "I'm going to the bathroom for a moment." She managed to move her feet and headed for the ladies' room. As soon as she closed the door, Judy darted into a stall and, with violently trembling hands, took out her smartphone. She dialed her best friend Martha's number. "Martha." As soon as the call connected, she whispered, "Something terrible is happening." "What is it?" "Judy, calm down," Martha's voice was filled with concern. "Thomas. Thomas is trying to kill me," Judy explained the events at the restaurant in a rushed voice, holding back tears. The note under the plate, Thomas's unusual behavior, his not touching his own food, and his urging her to eat. "I'll call the police. You need to get out of there right now," Martha immediately said. "But I still don't have concrete proof," Judy's voice was trembling. "What if I'm wrong? What if this is some kind of malicious prank?" "Judy, you shouldn't take the risk," Martha said. But if you want more evidence, ask for help from the restaurant staff. Especially the waiter who gave you the note. I'll do that, Judy said. I'll try to gather a bit more evidence. But I'll contact you right away if anything happens. After hanging up, Judy stood in front of the mirror and stared at her face. It was white, and her eyes were wide with fear. She took repeated deep breaths, trying to regain her composure. Before leaving the bathroom, she once again took the piece of paper from her bag and reread the words. Your husband is trying to kill you. Those words had a terrifying realism. Judy put the paper back in her bag and straightened her shoulders. She needed to keep a cool head and act calmly. She couldn't run away just yet. First, she had to gather evidence and find a way to escape safely. Who would have thought her life would be in danger in such an unexpected place? Judy took one last deep breath and left the bathroom. 15 years of marriage with Thomas. Shared memories, joys, sorrows. Were they all lies? Or had something changed him? As Judy returned to the restaurant floor, she tried to suppress her trembling hands. When Judy returned to the table, Thomas was nervously looking at his watch. As she sat down, he put on a forced smile. Are you okay? You took quite a while. Yes, just a bit, Judy pretended to be calm and looked at her plate. Actually, my stomach is starting to feel bad too. It's a shame for such a special dinner. A panicked expression appeared on Thomas's face. I see, but since we're here, maybe you could try eating just a little. The chef put his best effort into this dish. I can't right now, Judy said. Maybe we can take the food home and eat when I feel better. Let's have it to go. Thomas's face visibly paled. To go. Such high-end cuisine isn't suitable for takeout. Besides, it's our 15th anniversary dinner, Judy retorted. I'd at least like to thank the chef. Before Thomas could respond, Judy beckoned Arthur. Excuse me, could we meet the chef? The food looks beautiful, but unfortunately, we're both feeling unwell. Arthur glanced at Thomas for a moment. Of course. The chef is very busy at the moment, but a brief greeting should be possible. Please, this way, he gestured for Judy to follow. I'll come too. Thomas started to stand, but Arthur politely interrupted. I apologize, but for hygiene reasons, we can only escort one guest at a time to the kitchen area. She'll be back shortly. Thomas showed a dissatisfied expression but returned to his seat. Judy followed Arthur. While they appeared to be heading to the kitchen, they actually entered a staff corridor. Once in a place out of sight, Arthur stopped and turned to face Judy. His expression was serious. Madam, your husband was at this restaurant yesterday, he said quietly. He had a long conversation with Chef Carlos, and afterward, I witnessed Carlos receiving a large sum of money. Judy's heart raced. For what purpose? I'm not entirely sure, but I saw Carlos taking a special seasoning and adding something to the dish for a specific table number. Arthur took out his smartphone from his pocket and showed Judy an image. It captured Thomas handing something to a man who appeared to be Carlos. I took this photograph secretly. I wasn't certain, but I felt it was a suspicious movement. Judy gasped. My dish has. Yes. Carlos added a special seasoning only to your duck dish. Nothing was added to your husband's dish, Arthur continued with a serious expression. I've worked at this restaurant for over 30 years. I've seen many things, but this is the first time I've seen something like this. I was unsure whether to report it to the police, but the evidence was insufficient. Evidence, Judy murmured. Could I take a portion of the dish with me for testing? Arthur nodded and produced a small container. I was thinking the same thing. He quickly returned to the dining area and transferred a portion of Judy's food into the container. Please use this as evidence. Carlos will never confess. I believe he and your husband are conspirators. Judy suddenly took out her smartphone. "Actually, I'm recording this conversation," she said. Arthur looked surprised but quickly showed understanding. "That will also be good evidence." "Thank you, Arthur," Judy said with heartfelt gratitude. "If you hadn't warned me." "Don't worry about it," Arthur said. "However, be careful tonight. It would be good to leave early, pretending to have a marital dispute. And never be alone." Judy nodded and took a deep breath to compose her expression. "I have to act." Arthur returned Judy via the original route, behaving as if they had just finished a brief meeting with the chef. "I will convey the chef's apologies," he said in a loud voice. Judy returned to the table where Thomas was waiting. He seemed to have already settled the bill. "The chef?" Thomas asked. "He looked very busy," Judy said. "But when I told him I was feeling ill and couldn't eat the food, he seemed apologetic." Thomas appeared somewhat relieved. "I see. Then, shall we go home?" "Yes, let's do that," Judy agreed. She put the container in her bag and linked her arm through Thomas's. Inside, she was trembling with fear, but outwardly, she played the role of a calm wife. As they left the restaurant, Arthur saw them off. He gave Judy a small nod, and she nodded back slightly. Getting into the car, Thomas let out a long sigh. "It's a shame about our anniversary." "Yes," Judy agreed. "But when you're not feeling well, there's not much you can do." The car was enveloped in silence. Watching the city lights flow by outside the window, Judy contemplated her next actions. In her bag were a sample of the potentially poisoned food, a recording of her conversation with Arthur, and a copy of the photograph he had given her. If she took these pieces of evidence to the police. While driving, Thomas occasionally glanced at Judy. There was something unreadable in his expression. Anger, disappointment, or some other emotion. Upon arriving home, Thomas parked the car and turned off the engine. He turned to Judy and put on an unnatural smile. "You should rest well tonight. I hope you feel better tomorrow." "Yes," Judy agreed. "You too." She hoped her voice wasn't trembling. Tomorrow, she planned to go to the police. Tonight, she just had to act as usual to not arouse Thomas's suspicion. Entering the house, Judy said, "I think I'll lie down," and headed for the bedroom. Thomas remained in the living room and turned on the TV. Closing the door, Judy immediately sent a message to Martha. Collected evidence. Going to the police tomorrow. Acting as if nothing happened tonight. A reply came immediately. Be careful. Contact me right away if anything happens. If necessary, I'll come pick you up now. Judy hid her smartphone under her pillow and closed her eyes. The next morning, Judy woke up early and quietly got ready. While Thomas was still asleep, she got into Martha's car that had come to pick her up and headed straight to the police station. Arriving at the police station with evidence, Judy's expression was filled with determination rather than fear. She submitted all the evidence she had gathered, the sample of potentially poisoned food, the recording of her conversation with Arthur, the photographs taken at the restaurant, to the investigator. "You've been through a terrible experience, ma'am," an elderly female detective said, gently holding her hand. "You've shown courage and done the right thing." The police immediately began poison tests and interviews with involved parties, and the restaurant's chef, Carlos, was also summoned for questioning. The test results showed a lethal dose of arsenic in the food. Arthur's testimony and photographs, along with Judy's recording, became decisive evidence. A few evenings later, while Judy was temporarily staying at Martha's house, there was contact from the police. Thomas had been arrested at their home, and detailed messages about the crime plan with his lover Rachel were found on his smartphone. Rachel was also arrested as an accomplice. Why? Judy asked the detective interrogating during the investigation. Why did he try to kill me? A life insurance policy in your name worth $5 million. It seems he and Rachel were planning to use it to start a new life, the detective quietly answered. They have confessed to having been in a relationship for 3 years. The trial began 3 months later. Judy faced Thomas in court and looked straight into his eyes. In her former husband's eyes, there was no sign of regret, only anger that the plan had failed. Ultimately, Thomas received a 20-year prison sentence for attempted murder and conspiracy to murder, and Rachel received a 10-year sentence as an accomplice. 6 months after the trial, Judy completed her divorce proceedings. She decided to move and start a new life. "This is the last box," Martha said as she carried a small box into Judy's new apartment. Beside her, Arthur was wiping sweat from his brow. "Thank you for helping," Judy smiled at the two. Arthur had left Le Chateau and had now become Judy's friend. 1 year after the incident, the three opened a small cafe. Named Second Chance, the cafe became popular as a place where people who had overcome various difficulties gathered. One quiet evening, as Judy was doing the cafe's bookkeeping, she found an envelope from the Massachusetts State Prison among the mail. The sender was Thomas Williams. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside were words of apology and a confession that he had faced his true self in prison. Judy read the letter multiple times. While grappling with complex emotions toward the man she once loved, she made a decision. She would not write back. However, she secretly established a fund to support his social reintegration after his release, hoping for his rehabilitation. Surrounded by her new family in the cafe, Judy gazed out the window. Life had brought her cruel betrayal, but it had also given her a new beginning. She had learned firsthand that true family is not about blood ties, but the bonds between people who support each other in difficult times.